Who have already threatened
what do the public opinion polls say about women's
something like a woman's right to choose?
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's.
Where's
I
the
don't think
the
it's
polls
true.
are saying pro-life.
I don't think it's.
The polls are saying pro-life.
The polls are. Well, now there are polls that have actually come out.
In the 60% range. I mean, I could be wrong.
Self-identify as pro-life, slightly over that. Half are now pro-life, identifying themselves as pro-life.
Let me say this. I mean, I think the notion that somehow this is solely orchestrated by the far left, in contrast to the mainstream middle that John Ashcroft represents, I think is itself a distortion. I think it's fair to say, and I think we'd all admit, at least off camera, that John Ashcroft is more conservative than most in the Republican Party.
Well, let's do it on camera. Ed Murnane, is he more conservative than most people?
He's a little bit right of center, and
a little
probably
bit right of center is how you characterize it.
A little bit more conservative than the average Republican. Yes.
Do you consider him in the mainstream?
Yes, very definitely in the mainstream.
You consider him in the mainstream?
Far right wing, far right. Everything in his record indicates it. Everything he said, his entire political life has been geared to the far right. You don't have to have far left people objecting to. I'm not a far left person, and I was shocked when Bush came up with this. I couldn't believe that this man who wanted to unify us would make his attorney general somebody so clearly identified with the far political.
Are you saying, though, Jim?
The proof of the pudding is looking at the treatment of the other Bush nominees. I mean, for the most part, I, for example, don't agree with a missile defense system. But I don't think that soon-to-be Secretary Rumsfeld is in any way out of the mainstream of American political life. And I would argue that the same would be true for the vast majority of the Bush nominees, and I give him credit for that. So I don't want to be pegged as being far left simply because I find certain aspects in John Ashcroft's record to be divisive or offensive. I think it's legitimate for me to raise that. As I said before, if he brought up before us a nominee who didn't agree with me on affirmative action, and yet said that, you know, I do think that, and had shown a history of showing regard and concern for issues of racial justice, if he came before us and said, I oppose a woman's right to choose, or I oppose abortion, I find it religiously offensive. And yet I do respect, for example, the notion that we shouldn't be solving these things with violence. Historically, if that had been what's said, then I don't think I would object, and I think that's a fair position to take.
Is it a question of nuance and gradation that people are concerned about with regard to Mr. Ashcroft? Many people, his critics.